And welcome to Voice of Thermopolis podcast. I'm Aaron. I'm with Taylor today. We're doing our first customer experience at the Wyoming Dinosaur Center. We're excited here. We got set up with a private tour guide that we're going to go in and we're going to meet her and really just capture the experience of what it would be like to go through the Dinosaur Museum for the first time. So let's check it out.
Hi guys, I know you're not gonna see me much today, and that's okay, but we're gonna go inside the Dinosaur Museum.
All right. How are you? I'm Aaron.
Hi, Emma. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
That's our tour guide.
Hello.
Let's get this party started, right?
Okay.
So yeah, just a quick question. How long have you been with the Dinosaur Center?
Gonna be 2 years end of June.
Nice. Yeah.
Yep.
2 years into June.
That's
all right.
crazy.
So you know everything there is about dinosaurs?
What was that?
You know everything there is about dinosaurs?
A good bit. You know, every now and then we get some kids in here who know more than us.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, they come. They're like, actually, this is what happens instead, and we're like, oh, of course. And then we'll go in the back after and Google, and we're like, the kid was right. We gotta go change some signs.
Man, we gotta change some
Yep.
signs. That's super cool. Yeah. Oh no. All right, let's go.
So we rearranged the early life in here. We call this our walk through time. We have the whole museum arranged in chronological order with our oldest stuff right here, working all the way around to the end of the museum with our youngest. We also tried to arrange all of the cases with the oldest stuff on the left, youngest stuff on the right.
Wow.
But we'll hit our first big fossils that a lot of people recognize. And that's going to be our trilobite case over here.
Oh, I love these things.
Yep. So our trilobite case has a few new guys in it. We have our Eurypterids and sea scorpions over here.
What?
So difficult to get that on the back of the case. We thought it was going to fall.
Oh man, yeah,
But,
that's a whole sheet of rock.
Yes. Well, thank God the back of it is foam, but it's
Oh,
real rock
cool.
on the front, heavy enough. But we have some trilobites down here. They're kind of our big iconic index fossil.
Okay.
They're so common in the fossil record that they're used to accurately date other rocks without having to do the expensive carbon dating or isotope dating.
Wow.
So they act as like a good index for other museums.
All right.
This is a new one we got just in February. It's kind of hard to see these ones on the back plate right there. They're trilobites, and we know that they're female because they're carrying eggs.
Wow,
We need to get.
those are X-rays.
Yep. So up on the front, those are close-up images to see the eggs. We need a bit of a microscope up there. We're hoping to get one in there soon, but that's sort of our newest
Super
trilobite.
cool. All right.
Can I just point out real quick that Aaron looks like a goofball, like we're going hiking or some weird
I
crap?
was ready for some dinosaurs.
Usually we have a big museum tour at the end of all of our digs, so he fits right in for the group we have in the summer. These are our belemnites. They're not the flashiest fossils, but we like to point them out because they're something you find very commonly in this area. These guys were the two big ones, and then the little ones in the back were found here. One was found on the ranch, the other one was found, I think, around the Douglas area.
Wow.
But these ones are commonly found around here. They're called as bullet squid. They basically just look like a cuttlefish. And the little bullet-shaped fossil you find is the interior cone within the body.
And that's the only part that's hard enough for it to like maintain the life and be a
Yep.
fossil.
Yep, so we do sometimes get a full body preservation, like that has the soft body
With
and
the
the tentacle
tentacle.
hooks right there. And then this is a really cool one. This is from Solmhofen, Germany. You can see the belemnite cone right there, and then some sort of like weird wave going across the side. That is a fish. So this fish was trying to catch the belemnite to eat it, and the belemnite panicked, and when it went to swim away, it swam through the mouth, through the gill, suffocated the fish, and they both sank to the bottom of the seafloor.
And you know all of that from this.
Just from that one fossil.
Wow, that is incredible.
How does one kind of gather that's what's going on just from that one?
So a lot of times, like we can just look fossil and we can see that the belemnite is going sort of through the mouth of the animal.
Okay.
And a lot of times we have to look at these kind of instances and compare it to something modern. So we know that on occasion, a fish will choke on animal prey that's too large for it. So we just a lot of times have to take these instances and compare it to a modern example to figure out what happened.
I don't know.
Right on, that's cool.
Yep. We'll hit the crinoids and the death plate.
Crinoids.
Yeah.
What did you just call it?
This right here is a death plate. So a mass death plate. So a lot of times animals will die in one big mass grave. In this case, these trilobites were all traveling together, probably in migratory purposes. We don't entirely know why they were all there. And a large turbidity flow, or just a fancy word for underwater landslide, came through and buried them all together. The sign says there's 60. I've never counted them. I'm afraid to count all of them. But apparently there's 60 very large trilobites in there, especially compared to the ones we were just looking at.
So can you explain a little bit what a trilobite is exactly?
Yeah, so they're a type of arthropod, just like a crab or a lot of insects and spiders. They're just their own family. They look very similar to a roly-poly. They acted a lot like a horseshoe crab, just a more segmented body. And they lived for a pretty long period of time, but they all died out in the Permian. They have no living relatives. That's why I can really only say they closely resembled horseshoe crabs, or they looked like roly-polies.
Okay. Wow, so they don't have any genealogy that says they're part of the horseshoe crab or the roly-poly.
No living relatives.
Wow.
These are the crinoids. We like to point these guys out because they're just really odd, and we have a really cool one later. So it's good to get a premise of what they are. These ones are movie star crinoid. If you guys are familiar with The Matrix.
Oh, the ships.
Yep, the ships were almost, not sure which one came first, but they're like the exact copies of each other. So crinoids are an animal, but they look exactly like a plant. So sort of like how a Venus flytrap acts like an animal. These are animals that act like plants. They have a whole root system. They root to the seafloor, rocks, driftwood, and you can find their fossils actually pretty commonly in this area too. I don't have the patience for it. Basically, you have to sit there in the sand and sift it, and you have to look for little star-shaped, flower-shaped, or round-shaped discs in the sand. Like basically just
for gold, kind of?
yeah, just like panning for gold, just on the dry dirt. And some people really enjoy it. They find it relaxing.
Oh.
I sit there and I find maybe like 2 in an hour, and I'm like, okay, I'm done.
I probably wouldn't have the patience for that
Yeah.
either.
We'll have the big crinoid there. This is our shark. We always like to point out this one big shark. This is our Astracanthus. So all sharks, you can only find their teeth or jaws, so the only true bones in the body. We like to point this guy out because he is a full soft body preservation, and he sort of just shows how ancestral sharks did look different from modern sharks. That's because for sharks like Megalodon, we don't know what they look like. You have to look at the shape of the tooth, compare it to a living shark, and we're like, okay, that tooth looks like a mako shark, so he probably looked like a massive mako shark.
Wow.
This sort of shows how different they looked. So modern sharks, their tails are usually a nice V shape, very even. This one shows that most ancestral sharks had very uneven tail shapes.
And maybe even a fin.
Yep, a little tiny fin. These guys even had spikes coming off their back fins, sort of like catfish do today.
I was going to ask about
Yeah.
catfish. Okay, that's like a giant catfish.
Yeah, basically they had very similar body shapes to some primitive catfish.
So maybe catfish could be a dinosaur?
They have bones. These guys did not
No,
really. Yeah, they have cartilaginous bones, but no, not a lot of real
Not
bone.
quite. Okay.
But on the topic of something without bones, you can look at something that is all bones. So fish that's basically its name means bony fish, placoderm. These are our new guys. We had to rearrange them. They're on a lower stand. But these are famous fish. We have our Dunkleosteus. So Dunkleosteus, these are both real fossils. They're not very common to find anymore. Most of their dig sites have been closed. So we like to show these guys off. He is actually had one of the strongest bite forces in the animal kingdom.
Wow.
He had about between 11,000 pounds per square inch bite force. He was 30 feet long. As of a paper released 2 years ago, he's now 15 feet long. Bit of a downgrade, but the downgrade in size meant he had much more compact muscles, and he's estimated to have an even stronger bite force now.
Wow.
Yep, so stronger bite force than T-Rex and everything else. And the only thing this guy was hunting was, the one thing that could hunt him was another larger Dunkleosteus. But he was hunting basically everything else in the ocean.
Wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Unlike, yeah. 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 So this is another placoderm. He's basically the opposite lifestyle, our Titanichthys. He has no teeth, obviously, but he was a large filter feeder. The cool thing to point out about him is he's about 382 million years old. And between him and the evolution of modern baleen whales, we have no fossil evidence for a large filter feeder between them. So there's no guarantee that there wasn't. There most definitely probably was. There's just no current fossil evidence between the two in the oceans.
All right.
Yep. This is our mural. It's our new wall. We're so proud. But we sort of use this as to show a continuation of a long period of time. We have our Carboniferous era over here, where plants became very abundant on land, animals started to come onto land as well, and we transitioned into the Permian with iconic animals like Dimetrodon, a little Lystrosaurus in the back, we call him Odie, and at the because he's quite odious to look at. And and at the end of the Permian, we had our Great Dying. That was the largest extinction event in Earth's history. 95% of all life on Earth died out. So it was almost the end. We have some surviving species like Lystrosaurus, but because of this Great Dying, it sort of opened up the entire environment all over the Earth for new things to evolve, which is how we got the dinosaurs. Back then, there were no dinosaurs. Dimetrodon was actually more closely related to us and other mammals than dinosaurs.
So this whole thing here was more closely related to us then.
So there's a few key ways to tell. One's highly scientific and has to do with the shape of his teeth. We have all different kinds of teeth in our mouth. Dinosaurs only have one type of tooth. The other easiest way to tell is the skull. We have our eye hole right there, and then we have one fenestra behind the eye, so he's a synapsid. And if we move our mouth, and you can feel one muscle there, so we are also synapsids. Yeah.
The more you know.
We always love to pull out that trick for the kids because they're like, we find Dimetrodon in our toy box with all the rest of the dinosaurs, and I'm like, well, the toy box is wrong.
So walking into this space here, it opens up so big and there's so much to see. So how should I go about checking out the room?
So we tried to arrange everything in chronological order. So we had our Triassic in the back corner. There's very few fossil evidence of Triassic, so it's not much right there. But coming this way, we're moving into our Jurassic Hall. 2/3 of this museum is made up of the Jurassic period of the dinosaurs, because that is right here in Thermopolis. That's all the bones we find are in the Jurassic. Yep. So if we start here and move around, we're doing the Holzmatten and Solnhofen fossils from Germany. But moving in this direction, all against this back wall, is more Jurassic fossils, all right here from Wyoming. Well, from Thermopolis specifically. So this back wall and right here in the center is everything from Thermopolis.
All right, I'll make sure we point those out.
Yeah, so right here we have an Allosaurus skull material. This is from the ranch, well, right here from the museum. And we have up top here, it is styrofoam, but it is a one-to-one replica of one of our dig sites. So this is the SI, or something interesting, dig site. What makes this dig site so unique compared to all of our others is that it is one of only 3 confirmed feeding sites in the world. And this dig site, it's up on the hill, rainy days, no one can get there, and not everyone can get up there, so we wanted to make sure everyone can see this dig site. So we have footprints, we have some highlighted in red. We always get questions from little kids, why is there blood in the dig site? Red just stood out a lot easier in the dark. So we have all of our sauropod footprints, and every single dip and divot in here is also a footprint. So just imagine, a nice murky lake shore. All the dinosaurs are stepping over each other's footprints. Only a few are very clear. What makes this one unique is not only do we have footprints, we have bones in the dig site. And on all of our bones, we have tooth marks and scratch marks from an Allosaurus. Wow. So we have multiple Allosaur individuals coming to this area, feeding on the bones. We don't know how the dinosaur died. We can make assumptions, but we don't know. All we know is these guys were here, eating on a dinosaur that died in the location, and shed a lot of teeth. We have over 1,400 teeth in total from this site alone.
All right.
I want a tooth. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, so a little fun fact, if you're ever at like a museum, gift store, or anywhere else selling teeth, they're usually real, mainly because most dinosaurs, almost all dinosaurs, except the herbivorous ones, all theropods, shed their teeth as they age and just through normal wear and tear. So just like a shark sheds their teeth and a new row is behind it, in this case, when these guys shed their teeth, a new one forms as it's being pushed out. So they just continuously have new teeth throughout their lifetime. So allosaur teeth, very, very common, and why there's so many spinosaur teeth and very few spinosaur skulls.
So, do you guys sell any teeth here?
We sell a few, none that come from this property, but we do have a few teeth that we can sell. T-Rex is very rare. We think that they didn't grow a lot of teeth, that they had such big teeth, it took a lot of energy to grow new ones. So their teeth aren't very common, but allosaur teeth, spinosaur teeth, ceratosaur teeth, all the rest of the smaller theropods, their teeth are very common. I think we have a few, but I remember we bought like 2 kinds, but I think we have more in the back. We'll skip that one. That one's. Well, these are injuries. So big thing for dinosaurs is injuries that occurred in life. In this case, these are pathologies on an allosaur's leg. In this case, this guy had broken his back leg, and this bone right here would have been in just 2 main pieces, but it would have been just floating in the body. And this leg had healed enough that it was able to walk on just basically floating bones in its leg for many months, because it healed very well, did get some bone infection, but it survived long enough for some of the bones to fuse back together. So this is sort of evidence for pack behavior. We have a T-Rex that had the exact same injury occur, and it did not heal.
The exact same?
Almost the exact same. So the same bone broke, not in the same fashion because we don't know how, but the same bone broke, and in this case, this T-Rex had no signs of healing, died shortly after. This one healed long enough to get some massive bone growth for 2 entirely different leg bones to fuse together to help it walk easier. So we use this also as evidence that allosaur was pack hunting. Yep.
Pack hunting, you mean kind of like the velociraptors?
There's no true evidence for it, but we think that many allosaurs at least did opportunistic hunting together, just because otherwise something with a leg this broken wouldn't be able to feed itself, has to be relying on someone else to feed him to heal that much.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
So I had a question about the lighting in here. So it is pretty mood lighting feeling. Is it because that lighting has anything to do with the preservation of your exhibits, or is it just kind of feels good in here?
So it's a bit of both. In some cases, we do have to worry a bit about preservation, but all of our fossils have turned to stone. We don't really need to worry that much about lighting affecting them that much. We are hoping to get some more lighting, especially over in this corner, mainly, but we're just waiting for some new displays to come in before adding the lighting, because we just don't want to accidentally have it not shine in the right direction.
Right.
Okay, this is the big one I wanted to talk about with you guys. This is an Archaeopteryx. It is known as the Thermopolis specimen. There's only 14 Archaeopteryx in the world, and this is one of only 4 on display for the public. For the longest time, it was the only one in North America until Chicago got one about a year ago or so. We're very mad. We had to change all of our signage. We were the only one, and now there's another.
How dare you, Chicago?
How dare you? We're happy they have it. Welcome to the club. The other one is in Germany. Germany has the best preserved Archaeopteryx, and they have the original. London Museum of Natural History has one, because they must have one of everything.
It's London. They gotta be better, you know?
They gotta have one of everything. Ours is actually the most complete of the 3.
Beat you there.
Yeah, it's the most complete out of all 14, and it was the first one in North America, and it's been right here in Thermopolis for about 15 years.
That's awesome. I can see why you were really excited to talk about that. I would have been too.
Yeah, we always try to bring it up. Some kids, they're like, there's just a little thing in a box, but we used to have a little hologram, and they loved the hologram more than the bones.
Usually.
Yep.
It's usually how that works.
Ooh, we'll talk about Jimbo too, because Jimbo here is kind of the elephant in the room. He is the room. He is 106 feet long. He barely fits. We'll get a little closer to some of his bones.
So how many of Jimbo here is actual bone compared to what you guys have had to kind of fill in?
So Jimbo is between 45 and 55% real material. None of his real material is up on on display. He's too big and too heavy to be accurately displayed. He would honestly actually probably break the foundation if we did.
Oh.
Yep, he's super big, super heavy. We put all of his real bones scattered in the center here. Very difficult to get that up there. It was, yeah. Best way to tell if something is real or replica material is how is it being displayed. If anything is being hung from the ceiling, it's a replica. We wouldn't want something that heavy to accidentally drop. But also if the metal is going through the bones, if there's no exposed wiring, that it's a replica display. As we go through, you'll see some real ones, like we can see the tail of our Camarasaurus right here. You can see the metal pieces holding up the individual tail bones. Yep.
Then that's all real then. Well, I guess mostly.
Mostly, yeah. I was going to talk about him a bit on the end, but we'll hit him sort of more later. But You'll notice the unpainted plastic pieces here. That is the pieces we still need to find of Morris. He's from an active dig site, so we like to sort of show off, when people find the bones, they're finally ready to go on display, we'll switch them out and put the new ones up.
That's awesome.
Yep, so these are his real bones. Jimbo is 106 feet long. He is the largest dinosaur found in the state of Wyoming. He was found outside of Douglas at the Meisler family ranch. And he is also, a little known fact, the second largest dinosaur ever found in North America. Yeah, the only one that beats him is another Supersaurus at 120 feet. If you Google it, it says Alamosaurus is the biggest. Alamosaurus didn't get bigger than 90 feet. He was heavier, definitely the heavier dinosaur, but he was longer and, in my opinion, bigger. So I said he was the largest dinosaur ever found in the state of Wyoming. So what if I told you that the largest and smallest dinosaurs were found right next to each other?
Right next to each other.
10 centimeters away.
What?
Yep. So
Let's see this dino.
10 centimeters away from his fibula right here, one of his leg bones, we found Lori. Lori is called the Hesperornithoides meisleri.
Can you say that one more time?
Hesperornithoides meisleri.
I would mess that up so bad.
There is a training day where we have to go. There's a training day to say the names.
I was going to ask how many times did you have to say that in the mirror?
Oh, several. Yep. First day, they kept.
Were you guys tested?
Oh yeah, there is a test. You take us through, and no, the real test is when you take the kids through the museum. They come up and they're like, "What's that one say?" And you're sitting there and you're like squinting at the sign, struggling to pronounce it, and then they're like, "Oh, actually, it's like this," and they say it perfectly every time. Just like.
Kids are genius, man. My little brother Patrick, I used to bring him in here all the time, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that's like Littlefoot or something," and he'd be like, "No, this is what it is," and I'm like, "Apparently, you've never seen Land Before Time, but whatever."
Okay. So this is Lori. She was named after one of the people who helped find her. I didn't say it earlier. Our Supersaurus Jimbo got his name from the son of the landowner who found the first bones of Jimbo. So that's how a lot of our dinosaurs get their names. It's the person who first found the bones, somebody who helped work on the bones. Sometimes it's just a fun name, like our Camarasaurus Morris, because he's from the Morrison Formation. Yep.
How'd Lori get?
Lori was named after one of the people who helped discover her and work on excavating the bones. So we'll have like a little map here showing Jimbo's dig site. And the little red square is where her bones were found. So super tiny. We think she was likely eating insects, small reptiles, small mammals that were attracted to Jimbo. If we look at Jimbo's dig site, his bones are scattered all around. He was buried in a large landslide that we think occurred after a wildfire. Quite a good bit of charcoal wood was found in the dig site with Jimbo, so we think there was a large forest fire. No idea if that killed Jimbo or not. We estimate his age at around 100 years old, so old guy. Yeah, once you reach that big, nothing's eating you. Yeah. So we don't know how he died. We assumed he died first. Lori might have been attracted to the area and buried in a secondary event, because anything big enough to move his bones all around a pile like that probably would have crushed her bones too. So we think she might have happened a little later.
Yeah, that's crazy that this big guy and this little thing
Yep, right next to each other.
Yeah, that's insane.
So every summer we work in our dig sites, we work on sauropods. As someone who works with such large bones every day, I'm afraid for the day I find a bone like that in a dig site, because I'm working at such big bones. I'm like, oh, that's just a little fragment that broke off of something. Just gonna go right through that, and then I'd be so worried to come across something that small in a dig site.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it's just like a pile of
Yeah,
bones
just like a little pile. They're just like, oh.
all thrown together. And okay, go ahead and sort this puzzle out, but don't break anything or even brush it too hard.
Yeah, biggest fear is to come across like a little piece of that skull right there and just be like, oh God, something that small and delicate. Well, speaking of small and delicate, we also talked about our largest and oldest dinosaur. We also have some of our smallest and youngest dinosaurs right over here. These are some dinosaur eggs. It's a little blurry to get through the magnifying glass. We just like to show them off a little bit because they're very difficult to prepare, and you don't always find eggs with the bones inside of them. Usually you just find an egg and it's a solid egg. And I'm going to say this because we get this a lot in the summer. People come up saying they found a dinosaur egg. So here's a few clues to know if you found a dinosaur egg. They're usually round, very round, kind of like a flattened oval. They're going to have like some cracks along the top. Usually that is how the dirt gets in the egg to preserve it. And the real clue is on the outside of the egg. There's lots of little pores, sort of like a modern eggshell, but a bit bigger. And that's the best way to tell if you have an egg. We get a lot of geodes. Yep. Yep. But these eggs actually took, on average, 5 years each to prepare. They had to drop little acid on there, clean it off at the end of the day, and then start the process over for 5 years straight.
That's insane.
Yeah. Again, I enjoy working on our big sauropod dinosaurs from here, because I'm not going to break that. These were from Leinster, in Leinster, Montana. We like to point these ones out just because they were something that we helped dig up. So we have our Maiasaur here. Maiasaur is a very common dinosaur to find in North America. They're also one of the few dinosaurs that are always found with their eggs, with their babies. In Egg Mountain, Montana, you can find Maiasaur eggs and babies. That's always a fun one to point out. But we like to point these out because we have a few dinosaurs also from Leinster as well. Maiasaurs might be the most common, but we also find Bambiraptor, which is, I love the name of that one. Kids do too. And we also have a Gorgosaur from Leinster as well that we'll point out when I get to it. But this is our newest dinosaur for now on display, which is Cosmoceratops. Cosmoceratops is one of only 3 members of its species. Of the 3, the other 2 are found in Utah. One is the entire skull, making it the holotype, or the original determining member of its species. For instance, Lori is the only member of her species. She would be the holotype, and any other members of that species would have to be compared to her to get their names. A little fun fact about Lori, I just remembered it. Probably should have said it over there. She is the oldest troodontid of her family. So they say, dinosaurs evolved into birds. One of the earliest members of that was the troodontid family. She's the oldest member of her dinosaur group. So, oldest one so far until they find a new one. Okay, so he's one of only 3. The other's just the skull. One is a partial skull and a partial body. This dinosaur is the only one found outside of Utah in Wyoming. Thankfully, it stayed in Wyoming as well. And it is almost entirely complete. We have the whole skull as well as almost the entire body. And she's the only one on display. The other 2 are kept in permanent storage, so this is the only place to see a Cosmoceratops. Yeah.
It's so ominous looking
Yeah.
at this one. It's like something I see from like maybe a video game or something. How almost evil it looks with the lighting and everything. It's crazy,
Yeah,
and to see so much of it is a little wild.
we first put it together back around October, and it was great because we were like, oh my gosh, it has like little Frankenstein bangs going on there. And it was very ominous. We were real excited to put her up. This is another holotype specimen of ours. This is Mary, the Medusa ceratops. Yep, so she was named for her frill. So in life, there likely would have been some more keratin sheaths on top, and the frill would have come down and probably curled out a good bit more. It's easier to look at the shadows and see how they curl out, but she was named Medusa after her unique frill. Also, the last part of her species name is Loki, and that was because she was very tricky to determine if she was a new species or not. I like to think about all paleontological debates. You know, they're in like little conference rooms. They always end, in, two people screaming at each other, maybe some chairs thrown across the room. The debates got a lot more dramatic than I was led to believe. But they originally believed her frill had bite marks in there until they later determined that that was just the natural form of the frill. Yep, so she had a very fun name.
What kind of Triceratops, whatever you want to call it, is that one there?
Is Enioceratops. Yep, I remember Enio means something to do with the nose. I remember that. But Enio, very obviously named for his downturned nose horn. Likely would have been used for head-butting against each other. That nose likely wouldn't have been able to do nearly as much damage as something like a Triceratops. So likely just would have been for knocking against each other.
Looks like a really creepy clown nose, is what that reminds me of.
Yes. So I mentioned Bambi Raptor from the Leinster Quarry. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
This is one right here. So this is a replica of the Bambi Raptor. We don't have the bones on display. They're a little fragile. And we actually found this in storage. And as we were doing our remodeling, we were like, well, I found it in the back room. And I was like, oh my God, we got to put it up. And they're like, it's missing a foot. I was like, we can find its foot. We found the foot. It's back on there. Yep. So Bambi Raptor is officially back up again.
Can we, by chance, get, like, when we're done here, get a kind of glance of back there so people kind of know what they're looking at?
Oh, yeah. I'll show you the Gorgosaur. We'll talk about Morris, and we'll head over to the lab. So, oh, yeah. Yeah. So this is our Gorgosaur. We always like to point him out as well. This is an early Tyrannosaurus Rex. So we have our big T-Rex, but not all of them were that big. Most of them started out fairly small. And this is sort of a juvenile one. He'd probably be in between the size of our Alliaramus here and T-Rex, so, middle ground between the two. And we just love to look at the preservation on this guy. So he has, beautiful, perfect, fully complete. You can even see some tendons within the neck that fossilized. And I was told that he was prepped on both sides. It is true. I'm just too afraid to ever flip it to see the other side. But both sides were prepped down to this immaculate degree. Yeah, almost. And yeah, I'm scared to touch him too much. But I was told when he was found, they found just the head and neck. And that was the end of the dig season. And I was like, oh, he was so well preserved. How'd you find just the head and neck? Where's the rest of him?
And how long has this one been on display? How long have you,
This one's been on display for quite a while. We added some more bones from him as well. Apparently I was like, oh, where's the rest of him?
That was my next
Yep. Apparently the rest of him was not quite as immaculately preserved. The rest of him was a bit of a jumble.
So anticlimactic.
Yeah, we added the rest of it in there because, people always asked, where's the rest of him? The rest of him's right there. He's not as pretty.
So I got to ask you about my favorite dinosaur, this T-Rex here. Do we have a name? And how much of this, if at all, is real for that?
So this is Stan the T-Rex. He is a replica. He's actually the most replicated T-Rex in the world. So you can actually kind of pinpoint him out in other T-Rexes due to some very key differences. The first and best one is looking at his skull. And you see that tiny little hole in the top side corner? That is from a T-Rex bite mark. and he's kind of just filled with injuries. He's got some more bite marks on the side of his head. He has a very swollen neck bone on this same side, showing where he broke his neck and survived. He has some broken ribs, some more bite marks on the top of his body, and more iconically, his hip and leg on this side are some extreme arthritis. And I mentioned earlier with our Allosaurus that our T-Rex have the same broken leg. It's hard to see from this angle because we had to turn him. That was a fun day. But his back leg on this side has that same break from the Allosaurus, which is what eventually killed him because he's too heavy to walk on or even limp on two legs.
It's so crazy how a big terrifying dinosaur like that has little tiny chicken arms.
Oh yeah.
They can't do nothing with them.
Most people actually are surprised his arms end up being longer than they expected.
They're shorter than I expected, if I'm gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, I always like to point out that he still couldn't do much with them. His head's still too long.
It's like, what's that movie, Meet the Robinsons, where he's like, big head, little arms?
Yes, big head, little arms. All right, so I'll show you some stuff that come from this area real quick. This one's not from the area, but Stegosaurus skin impression. We always like to point that out. It's a very faint trace fossil. You can see the tiny little bumps in the rock. And through the mirror, you can see some ribs and a scapula. That would be right here where his skin was.
Right, just look in the mirror. You can see what she was talking about.
Yeah, we always like to point out the Stegosaur. We don't find a Stegosaurus on our ranch, which is kind of odd because Stegosaurus is one of the most common Jurassic dinosaurs to find in this formation. We just don't have it. We think it just might have been just environmental factors or something, but we find every single sauropod you could think of, nothing else.
So by your guesstimate, just real quick, on the ranch, like, how often is it that you guys find bones or preservations or anything like this?
Every single day.
Every day?
Yep, we
How
have.
big is the ranch?
So in total, it's about 7,500 acres. Woo. Out of all of that, we only dig on 5.
Why is that?
On those 5 acres, we have upwards of 130 dig sites in 5 acres.
And we keep finding things
Yep,
every
yep.
day.
We're gonna have to do that.
Yeah, we tell people, not guests, we tell the interns, do not find bones. We want to get our old bones out. We don't want to find any more new dig sites. We have enough dig sites to work on. Some of them are considered what we like to call extinct dig sites, and that just means we pulled all of the bones out of them and there's nothing left.
Absolutely no chance of anything being left.
There's always the chance, but usually we don't declare something extinct until after about 5 years or even like just 2 or 3 years of finding very little bone left. At that point, we'd have to tear down a huge chunk of land to even attempt finding more. So you'd like to declare that area gone. We still keep it in the registry. If we ever have a really slow year, we'll try to find more. But with 130 dig sites, if a dig site's really slowing down, we have plenty to choose for a new one. Yeah, we're hoping to open up some new ones this year, actually.
And we're coming around to more recent times, right? So
all of this is actually, we moved a bit backwards. So T-Rex or Ceratopsians, all of those guys were Cretaceous, end of the dinosaurs, right before the extinction. Everything we find is the middle of late Jurassic, right before the Cretaceous. So it's actually a bit of the heyday of dinosaurs. That's when we get our huge huge sauropods, and a huge diversity of dinosaurs before moving into the Cretaceous.
So I just have a quick question. Do you think the reason there's so much stigma about the T-Rex being part of the Jurassic is because of the movies?
Yes.
Does it ever frustrate you sometimes when you watch the movie? Like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong.
Yeah, a good bit sometimes. Honestly, we always feel bad because kids will show up and be like, I can't wait to find a T-Rex, and we're like, you're still not going to find a T-Rex. But we always try to cheer them up. We're like, what? You're not going to find a T-Rex. You might find an Allosaurus. That's like a T-Rex with arms, so he's more dangerous.
Then you have the big old fin on the back too.
He can actually flush the toilet, right?
Yeah, he could actually hold on to something.
Right.
Yeah. So these are some of our cool bones from the ranch. Right here we have what's called a traumatic injury. It's 3 broken tail bones. He had a very broken tail, very crooked. Probably had some major pain. So this came from a large sauropod dinosaur, so one shaped more like Jimbo that we saw. So that tail is a bit more important. And I love to point this one out. This is from our dig site, LA, Laura's apatosaur. And it is a genetic mutation in a dinosaur. So there is a few research papers done on it, but it is two tailbones. You can see the top two neural spines. So it had two individual neural spines. The two centrums of the vertebra are fused together, and there's only a single chevron between the two. So it's probably would have been a mutation that affected it in life, but it's very cool to see that it still happened in dinosaurs. Probably not going to see a two-headed dinosaur fossilized anywhere, but you have a minor mutation here.
Has there been anything like that discovered? Is like, this could be a mutation?
As far as I know, like no major mutations have been found. There's several articles based on this one, but when we were doing some generic research, we couldn't find any other things documented or written about. That doesn't mean it does not exist. All museums have a huge backlog of fossils to go through. Like we pull just this past summer 425 bones in one summer. So we always have plenty to go through to find and do research on and clean up. So there's no telling what's sitting in the back of a museum somewhere just waiting to, someone to pull it out of collections and be like, oh my God, that's a new species.
Wow. Just like that.
So this is Morris. He is our Camarasaur. He is the most common dinosaur we find on the hill. I like to joke around and say he's our smallest dinosaur. We do find Allosaur, which is smaller, but we've only pulled up 2 in 30 years. So reliably, he's the smallest one we work on. He's about 65 feet long, would weigh around 20 tons in life, and he is from the active dig site beside Sauropod. We like to say he's active because when you go up to the lab, I'll show you, he have his 7th, 8th femur being prepped. He obviously doesn't need 8 legs, but that leg is about 50% bigger than this one, so it's obviously from a different individual. So it's always a struggle to find out what pieces belong to which dinosaur. We can't find his lower legs. It's been 30 years, and we've never found his lower legs. But we have found reliably 95% of the rest of him. He's 95% complete. He's one of the most complete that we have on display. I'm not sure if he's the most complete Camarasaur. He is a composite specimen. In the dig site, I mentioned we found 7 femurs, so we have multiple individuals in the same dig site. So I'm not sure if that would throw a wrench in how complete he is, but he's 95% complete, and we assume the rest of him is all there. One day, we'll get all of him.
One day.
It's crazy that the legs are like...
Just his lower legs will not come up. Yeah, everyone always asks where his head is. We do have his head. Camarasaur skulls are one of the only sauropod skulls to reliably be fossilized. It's right here. We always get questions about where his head went. It's right there. We just want people to be able to see the head more close up, and we also don't want to put it that high up.
So what kind of work goes into getting them all displayed like this?
So the first step was getting them out of the ground, and the next step would be taking it down into the museum. We have to put a nice jacket over top of them, a big plaster cast. So if you ever break your arm and you get a plaster cast, we use the same material to go over our bones to take them out of the dig site to keep them safe on the drive down. Thankfully, ours is a short drive, so it's not too much damage to them. And then we work on prepping away all of the rock, and I can show you that in the lab, and I'll sort of talk as I do. So as we prep away the rock, we use different tools, which they should be using them in the lab right now. And after it's fully prepped, that can take several years. We were lucky. The current one we're working on took 2 years to do finalized prep, and that was really just doing detail work, filling in any gaps. The bulk of that work had actually been done over the course of 15 years by past employees and interns and everyone else. So I'll actually come over to this window where it's a little clearer. This is our prep lab. We have some of our new interns working in there right now. In the back, you'll see them working on one of our most recent femurs for Morris. It is about 50% bigger, so it's not going to be going onto the mount when it's complete. We are hoping to actually stick it into the new SI exhibit because it's really big. We don't want to carry it upstairs to collections. So And it fits. We want to have one bone from every major dinosaur we find in that exhibit anyway. We have a few other smaller bones being worked on, some backbones, some tailbones, and those little, and sort of, I mentioned air tools. So we have those little pipes there. They funnel pressurized air through those little tiny drills, and they're basically miniature jackhammers pushing out high pressured air, and it's just chiseling the rock away for us. And you can use we like to call them the big boy tools. They're like this big. What we use to open a jacket. They're very difficult to use on occasion. They can be quite damaging. And we have all the way down to a micro jack, which can be like a centimeter long, the whole entire tool, tip and all. And they basically remove a grain of sand at a time. Wow. Those ones are not fun to use, actually.
That's when you're getting between the teeth and stuff, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm barely prepped skull. We're always too scared we're going to break a tooth or something. Actually, to keep things from breaking, we have vacuum tanks in that back corner window. In these vacuum tanks, we fill them with acrylic and water, and we put the bones inside of the tank. They basically look like giant stock pots with a top, and they suck all of the oxygen out of the tank, and it also sucks all the oxygen out of the pores within the bones. And when it sucks all the air out, the water and acrylic mixture soak into the bone, and we usually leave it there for about 12 hours. Then we wait 24 hours for it to dry after that, and it helps keep them much sturdier. So like most of these bones weren't tanked. If they were dropped right now, they might break into like 50 to 100 pieces. After being tanked, they'll break only maybe like 4 or 5 pieces. I can attest they break into less pieces.
No, do you have an experience?
Yes. So I always say you're not a real paleontologist until you break your first bone. In the field, they get broken quite frequently, but I always say, it's okay if a bone breaks as long as you can put it back together. And put it back together well enough no one can tell.
That's the trick.
That's the trick.
So real quick, to be an intern here, do you need to have like your degree or whatever, just for anybody that's maybe curious?
No, not entirely. We have had interns in the past without any degrees at all. And we actually have a very good mix right now. We have some interns without degrees, some interns with just the bachelor's, some with the master's, some getting PhDs. Really, for us, it all depends on experience. And when you apply, we like to look through. We like to see, have you volunteered at museums in the past? Have you ever worked in a dig site or a prep lab on a volunteer basis before? Are you just really passionate, and we're willing to just sort of take anyone who's willing to apply? Yeah.
So if I wanted to, absolutely no degree, just my GED, no history of, with the museum, anything like that, I'd be able to just hopefully.
Anyone can apply. I would say, your chances are probably better if you have some volunteer experience.
Right.
And it's always good to have some field experience. It's very rare to get field experience, and that's why we love to open up this internship to everyone, even internationally, because it's just very difficult to find paleo internships. Very few people will have museums open for interns to actively dig anything or work in a prep lab. Prep lab's more common. Dig site experience is very, very rare. And on that note, we were actually the first museum to open up dig sites to the public in the world. Yep, so we were the first museum to allow the general public to come into our dig sites, to work on our bones. So we really do open it up to anyone.
Way to go, Thermop.
Yeah.
All right. So a question I have asked, and this is for Thermopolis, is why come to the Thermopolis Dinosaur Center?
We have one of the largest dinosaur collections in the country. The vast majority of our mounts, dinosaurs and everything is real. About 75% of everything in this museum is real bone. So we have a very, very complete collection compared to everywhere else, especially for our size. As I mentioned earlier, we're the first museum to allow the public into our dig sites, and we're very proud of that fact. We love to take people not just to dig in our dig sites, but we even just run daily tours where we just like to bring people up to the hill and see all of our dig sites, see everyone actively working, so you can sort of get in touch to local, I like to say local history, but it's a bit older than local, prehistoric local history.
So my question is, what made you guys decide to open it to the public, and how long is the? I know it's like just during the summer, but what are like the dates specifically for that?
So usually it runs from about June 1st to the end of the summer. I think our hours are going to be slightly different this year. We might be opening a little later in June, but reliably we're open June to end of so September 14th-ish. Sorry. We're running into a bit of oddness just because we've had a very, very wet spring. Right. Yeah, last summer we were able to get up on our dig sites like early April. Got to our dig sites for the first time last Friday.
Oh no.
Yeah, so we're running a bit behind on opening, but usually June 1st, September 14th.
So why did you open it to the public?
So that's a bit before my time, but yeah, it's a little bit before it. But I believe we just really wanted to get the public more involved with the museum, to sort of get everyone more involved with geology, because this is a field where it's usually you only get into it once you have a doctorate, and you only get to see a dig site if you went to the university for it, if you were lucky enough to be selected by your professor, and we just really wanted everyone to be able to see what goes on behind the scenes.
I think that's pretty cool.
So then, right now we're in the like a picnic table area. Is this the part of the tour where you guys have lunch, or do we have that somewhere else?
We try to keep eating in here to a minimum. Usually, this area's main focus is where we used to corral kids in school groups. Well, at least in the spring, we use it to corral the kids. But yeah, you guys can eat up in here. We do try to keep it limited, just so no one wanders with food throughout the main gallery. But yeah, we have people who come in here for a long tour. They get tired. They sit here and have picnics, decide their next move. But yeah.
So I have a question, and I don't know if you would know this because this again before your time. So we have the what is it called, buffalo pasture, and at one point you guys had one of the biggest buffalo we've had in here taxidermied. And I
Heard a bit about it.
was kind of wondering what happened to him, if you maybe would know. His name is Flower,
Yeah.
if that means anything.
I heard once that there was a bison, and we were going through some old pictures. We're gonna make like a memory wall, and we found a picture of a bison, and we like ran up to like some of the other people. Were like, "Why was there a bison in here?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, there used to be one." We didn't hear anything more about it other than that there was a bison here. It was a bit before my time, but I am curious. Like I was like, "There was a bison in here?"
Yeah,
Where did they put
he
it?"
was right here along this
Okay.
wall, because I remember I came in here one time with some family, and I saw him, and I got really excited, and they were like, "I don't understand why you're excited." The biggest buffalo that Thermopolis has had that I'm aware of, and it just the name Flower, to name the
Okay.
biggest bison. I was like, all right, cool.
Well, we also used to have the largest pterodactyl right here last summer, so we do try to keep like rotating mounts right in
Okay.
this area. We don't have it up right now because we were doing renovations and we had to move like a 15-foot pterodactyl like every day. So finally we're like, okay, he's coming down. But we do try to cycle through some nice bison would be good because we're not have to worry about people breaking him. But we do like to try to keep rotating stuff over here.
And if you put the bison out, then people can touch it without getting, mauled. Don't touch the bison.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Well, we do have a few mammal fossils. We don't talk about them too much because they're in their own little room over
Yeah,
here.
you can absolutely.
Most of these are all from Wyoming as well. A lot from the Kemmer area. A lot from White River as well.
So,
We get a lot of questions. That's Archelon. He is one of the largest I think the largest sea turtle to have ever lived. He's from South Dakota, so I like to think, oh, South Dakota, he was an ocean large enough for this guy. This one is a replica display, thankfully, because he's kind of over top of the room we're about to go in. Hopefully he will not fall.
So, quick question. Dinosaurs, I know you said mammals and stuff. So, like, were dinosaurs more of, like, the reptile family, kind of?
So they're definitely closer to reptiles and birds. So I mentioned earlier with Dimetrodon, he had the one hole in his head. Dinosaurs, birds, and reptiles all had two, so they're diapsids. They were all relatively in the same family. They were definitely very split from the reptiles. They'd split very early on, but they are more closely related to reptiles than us.
So, what would you say? Because there's a lot of, like, rumor, speculation, whatever you want to call, that the T-Rex is closer to a chicken.
So he definitely comes from so all birds are dinosaurs. Not all dinosaurs were birds. Like ceratopsians, all of our myosaurs, all of like stegosaurus, all of these guys were called bird-hipped dinosaurs or ornithischians. Or bird hips do not become birds. It was very tricky. It was sort of like Greenland, Iceland. These guys were in the same family, the saurischians, that eventually became birds, but they were probably from a very different split line. By the time T-Rex was around 66 million years ago, we already had fully feathered, flying, more bird-like animals than true dinosaurs by that point. So think like seagulls with like teeth, and that was the kind of birds still flying around at the time. So he was like distantly related, but same line. So more like how, I'm trying to think of a good comparison, sort of like how lemurs, monkeys, and apes are all in the same family, but none of them are super closely related to people. So T-Rex would have been more like a lemur compared to like a human ancestor.
Okay.
Sit in the same grouping,
But not directly.
close, yeah.
Okay. Just was curious.
It's a good question. We get that one a lot. Like, how closely related is he to a chicken? And we're like,
There's a lot of speculation.
He's kind of close.
Yeah, there's just a lot of speculation, and you don't want to go in thinking like, oh, a big animal like that with the tiny arms is 99% chicken.
Yeah.
Just bigger. But, anyways, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. This is our mammal room. So this is sort of everything after the dinosaurs. On this side, we like to talk about this guy. This is Archaeotherium. Archaeotherium can be found in lots of places in Wyoming in the White River Formation. We had a great luck with Kent. He works at the Tate Museum, and he works with that Casper University. Oh my God, I forgot the name. He works there. Yeah. He took us and some students out to where he digs, and he told us about how he can sometimes find Archaeotherium skulls. One of the students had great luck and found a Probostherium skull as well. But these guys are kind of like early camels. So there used to be camels in Wyoming.
The more you know.
Yeah, tiny camels, very small camels. And we had Archaeotherium up here. Archaeotherium is affectionately known as the hell pig. He was kind of more closely, just kind of think hippo. He was more closely related to like hippos than pigs. So a hippo that could run on land and ate meat. Hippos are the most dangerous animals in Africa, but this guy would like actively hunt you, not just chase you. Yep. They were kind of picky eaters. They liked to make food caches, just like squirrels would store nuts. They'd store animals. And we know that they were picky because certain things would be eaten off. In this food cache of camels, we have like a little map of the bones that they're in different individuals. All of them are missing their back legs. So if this guy got a KFC bucket, he'd be eating just the drumsticks first and storing everything else for later.
So basically this is just a display of like what this guy did.
Mm-hmm. Yep, so we find food caches pretty easily. So to fossilize, you got to be buried really rapidly. They're burying all of these guys in the same location. So we tend to find a lot of food caches because
he kind of very real.
Yeah, so he did the work for us. He buried all of them.
Thank you, buddy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Who else lost their back legs was our big boy over there. Maybe there's some relation.
Hopefully. We're hoping something drug them off. Otherwise, he's just being very difficult.
So, just a quick question. Is there any way to kind of like test the animal to see if they're, I mean, obviously not related like siblings sort of way, but if they come from the same line? Mm-hmm. Other than the looks, I mean,
yeah.
obviously.
Well, actually, it's usually done more based on looks.
Okay.
We can't really do any kind of genetic testing with the bones once they've turned to stone like this. So we actually look at the shape of the bones to determine what family they belong to. So we have to look at like over time, like, oh, these guys all have the same shape of leg. They have all the same shape of neck bone and backbone. And we have to compare the bones to each other to determine family groupings.
So there's no secret like Jurassic Park style going on here?
No. And that's why it's a lot of times things change all the time. Because, for instance, we said Jimbo, he's about 45 to 55% complete. He is considered one of the most complete supersaurs out there. So everything missing, there's no material for whatsoever. So what bones we do have look really close to Diplodocus. So all of his missing bones are replaced with Diplodocus. So his skull is just a Diplodocus skull scaled up to his size.
Okay.
Yep, so we assume he's in the same family because until we find more bones, that's just what he looks like.
Okay.
Yep. Well, these are some White River cats. Over here is Hoplophonus.
Do you have to go through, like, when you start, like, okay, you're going to do, like, a 3-week training just specifically for names?
Yes. And also, like, half the time, you'll skip a few. Like, sometimes someone will ask a question about a very specific animal, and, like, I've never talked about you before. Let me just stand sideways while I read the sign for you real quick. But this one is an early cat relative. It's part of, like, the saber-tooth family. Not directly related to the saber-toothed tiger. This guy actually it's from a different family line. I cannot remember exactly. When this gets posted, probably going to get torn up. But I think this guy.
No hate.
I think this guy's not too closely related to most modern cats. But so he's actually fairly close to the size of modern the Sunda clouded leopard. That is actually considered the closest thing to a modern saber-toothed cat. He's about the same size, and that modern cat has the same length of tooth compared to skull size as this guy. So there are still technically modern saber-toothed cats around, but this guy was running around this area, much smaller than the average mountain lion, much smaller, a little bigger than a bobcat at least. But this was our version of a saber-toothed tiger until we ended up with cave lions, which were much larger.
So how close was saber-tooths to dinosaurs, whether it's the crustacean or the Jurassic, whatever?
So, oh gosh, I don't study the mammals too often, but so to put it in perspective, we talked a bit about Allosaurus and T-Rex, and now these guys. T-Rex, we were more likely to see a T-Rex, and these guys were more likely to see a T-Rex running around alive than Allosaurus was to seeing a T-Rex. There was such a large time difference between the two.
Okay, so we're closer to seeing a T-Rex than the Allosaurus?
Yep, so the Allosaurus is about 150 million years old. This guy's 66. Okay. So between the time periods, we would be more likely to see him running around than a T-Rex would have been to seeing an Allosaurus. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we always talk about geologic time, like, oh, these guys were kind of close to us. Like, oh, these guys were super young. They're only like 35 million years old.
Only?
Yeah, they're only 35 million years old. Usually like right around the lab, but sometimes we also walk them up. So we've sort of gone through like the whole range of time periods here at the museum. We took you from the very early life. We could find a lot of that stuff right here in the U.S. Some of it's from France and Germany, but we like to ignore those ones. And so we came all the way through the Jurassic, where we dig, the Cretaceous with our iconic dinosaurs. We saw the mammal room, which, right after the end of the dinosaurs. But, we end sort of modernly with us in the gift shop. Modern American experience.
So right now we're heading toward the end of the tour. We got all of us, the Voice of Thermopolis. Thank you so much for giving us this tour and letting us be a part of all this. Yeah. We're gonna have to get a picture of all of us to put on the video and everything. Yeah. But I appreciate everything. We learned so much. You guys do so much for the town, and this is so cool. We'll go through the gift shop real quick and to give a couple shots of some of the cool stuff you can pick up, the cool swag. Encourage locals. It's only $2 for locals. And then I don't know how much for non-locals, but please come in, check it out again. There's always new updates and stuff. Didn't you guys just do a renovation?
Yeah, so everything you saw was renovated. I don't think the only thing that wasn't moved was Jimbo and Morris, because they're too big. Everything else was moved around, or at least spun in a different direction. So everything's been renovated. All
right, so come in, check it out. It's going to be a great time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was our customer experience at the Wyoming Dinosaur Center. It's been a great experience here on the Voice of Thermopolis podcast, and I certainly had a great time. Our guide was absolutely perfect. She knew everything there was. And now we're just leaving here. This is the gift shop you'll find on your way out, and please pick up some of this really cool stuff. All of this here is affiliated with the Dinosaur Center and really interesting. So you'll find something you like, I promise, from the shark teeth to some of the stones and some of the more crafted items over here, which is really cool. So the front desk here is gorgeous, and they have very helpful people. They're under construction right now, so we're not gonna put them on blast. But I appreciate everyone that's watched this, and thank you. Come check out the Wyoming Dinosaur Center. It's awesome, and you should definitely come here again. We're gonna actually do another experience in the future where we get to go to a dig site, and maybe we'll bring the kids. Thank you all for watching.
Dusty boots on a wooden floor. Small town nights we crave for more.